Dobar dan poštovani gledalci, vi gledate emisiju Nauka i Misterije, produkcije Balkan. Ja sam Nemanja Blagović, a sa nama je danas gospodin Sal Rachele, jedan od najvećih svetskih istraživača globalne agende, iscelitelj, medijum, autor 7 bestsellera, knjiga vezanih za duhovnost i mnoge druge tajne koje vezuju naš svet. Pričat ćemo na engleskom, nadam se da našim gledalcima neće to biti problem. Thank you, Mr. Sal, for your trip to Serbia and your time to talk with us.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, so please, for everybody who is looking for spiritual literature, they can look on internet for Sal books or in the link below, and they will learn much more about all of this we will going to talk.
Yeah, obviously we don't have time to go into great detail, so you'll find it in the books.
Okay, the global dark leaders see the year of 2030 as the start of the new agenda, new world order. You also see that year as the beginning of new positive changes hitting the earth. So I will go on with that, and the first question is, what will happen in those years from now to 2030? And our viewers can look in your book great changes from 2012 to 2030 and see more details about what happened.
Yes, it's important to understand the idea of density levels and dimensions when discussing what's going to happen. And this is something that a lot of people are confused about, because they think, well, which is it? Is it the dark cabal is going to take over and enslave everyone? Or is it, we're going to be liberated and move into a beautiful new earth? And the truth is, it's both A and B. It's all of the above. And it depends on what level of consciousness you are attracted to, tuned into, focused on, and what we call activating. Because to activate a reality or a timeline or a dimension means, very simply, to give energy, time, focus, and attention to that particular reality. And this is because we're powerful, creative, spiritual beings. And whatever we focus on, we tend to become. In fact, that's one of my favorite quotes. What we focus on, we become. Now, that's the simple part. The more complex part is that we have collective will, the collective will of humanity, which tends to be divided into 3 main camps. The first camp I call the imprisoned will, or the third density humans, the more animalistic humans, who are conformists. Sheeple is a popular term. They blindly believe what's on the BBC or the CNN. They expect government to take care of them and care about them, and the medical industry is working for their benefit, and so on and so forth. And we can all see where that leads. So that's the third density, imprisoned will. Their will is not free because they're a slave to their belief systems. Big Daddy government's going to save them, or Jesus is going to come down in a fiery chariot and save them, or whatever it is that they believe. The second type is the fourth density humans. These are the free thinkers. This is where true free will is. And these are the people who can see the false nature of the matrix, the beliefs of society. And so they want to create a new world, and they want to be more free thinkers, more independent, and they believe in metaphysics. They believe that your thoughts create your reality, which is only partially true, and I'll explain that in a little bit. And then they want to maybe bring about an enlightened society with enlightened currencies, cryptocurrency being kind of like a rudimentary version of that. Then you have the fifth density humans, which are more the spiritual. This is the realm of God's will. So we have imprisoned will, free will, and God's will. And these are the people who align themselves with the laws of the universe. They recognize that we are one being expressing through billions of forms. So they do not identify with this physical form and think, oh, I'm separate from you, and I'm separate from you, and you're my enemy, and you're my friend. No, it's like we are one being, we're connected, and this is the realm of true unity. And these are the teachers that are going to guide us into the glorious new earth that's been prophesied by my spirit guides and by many, many others. But if you're in the 75% of humanity that's stuck in third density, you're not going to make it through the earth changes. I'll just put it out there bluntly. You're not going to make it through because you're going to create death and destruction, because that's what third density does. It's the realm of entropy and decay and chaos, the law of chaos. And you'll find that if you're stuck in third density, life is going to get harder and harder, more and more dense and difficult. So it's the fourth density souls that we are here to teach. We're here to bring those souls who really want to grow and evolve, but they're saying, help me, I'm stuck. My ego is trying to run my life. The government's trying to run my life. The church is trying to run my life, and I want liberation. I want freedom. So please help me. So these are the souls that we are here to help. We meaning the fifth density souls, more or less the teachers. So those are, in order to understand the question, we kind of have to go into the three levels. So the question is basically what's going to happen around the year 2030. The Dark Cabal certainly has a plan to enslave everybody, probably before the year 2030, but, you know, they'll go with 2030. You know, Klaus Schwab and his World Economic Forum, and you'll own nothing and be happy, which actually they're borrowing from higher ideas, but then they're twisting them into their own egotistical program. So some souls are fooled by that, and they think, oh yeah, I'll own nothing, I'll be happy, I don't have to worry about taking care of a house, you know, my meals will come to me, maybe it's Soylent Green, but who cares, right? If you know what Soylent Green is, humans packaged into little green wafers. And but the true unity, which is not the same as conformity. Conformity is third density, unity is fifth density. This is where we recognize we're all God's children, we're all created in the image and likeness of God. We are powerful, creative, spiritual beings, and we can come together and co-create a new world based on love, unity, principles, harmony, cooperation, cleaning up the environment, all the other aspects that go along with that. So right now it's about 25% of humanity that is moving towards the fifth density reality, and it's about 75% of humanity that's moving toward the third or that's stuck in the third density reality. And my indication was that it was going to be mostly unintentional, that people will refuse to live according to higher laws and principles, and they will end up not being able to keep pace with the earth, which is ascending in vibration, which is the other principle, which maybe we get to in the questions. The idea that the earth is actually moving into a higher frequency. This is, again, prophecy by many teachers. And those souls who are unable to move out of the lower densities will be unable to ascend with the earth. They will become more and more out of phase with the higher principles, and they will be taken to planets that are third density, because Earth is now a fourth density planet. And the third density souls they're already out of place. They're already vibrating at a lower rate than the Earth herself, and so they will be taken to third density planets in order to continue their soul evolution. It's like a school, and we have the beginning, intermediate, and advanced students, and the school is like breaking up into three individual schools. The advanced students get to go to this university, the middle students get to go to this school, and then the lower students get to go to a third school. So it's kind of a divergence. I call it harmonic divergence. The Bible calls it separating the wheat from the chaff, and it's basically through our own consciousness we determine the level of reality we desire to experience. And 75% of humanity wants to experience the lower dimensions. And so they will get their wish because ask and ye shall receive. Yeah, I want to experience war, poverty, misery, and suffering, and I'm not ready to experience love, unity, and harmony, so therefore I will have that experience that I'm creating metaphysically. So that's a long explanation of that question.
I liked it. So are you telling us that we are living in the ruptured times? And you can tell us what is that? And is that meaning that some people will die? And how your sources tells you how will that happen?
Well, we can already see it happening. There are probably a dozen environmental factors that are leading to immune system failure, which is the biggest. My guides say that about half of humanity will die from immune system failure. They've been saying that for 15 years.
So we can tell this is a God will, because in Vedic tradition and in your books, we're in the special times where when the God's conscience come here more directly and do what needs to be done. In the Vedic tradition, it said in the universe, everything is so perfect, just a little thing, when it comes out of order, and then God's conscience needs to go down to put that in the order. And who will bring that order now?
Well, we are the ones we've been waiting for. You've heard, I think the Hopi elders said that, and several others said that. We are the ones we've been waiting for, because we are co-creators with God. All of us are, but the souls that are focused on lower density vibrations are not manifesting their God-given abilities, or they're manifesting them, but they're misqualifying the energy, they're distorting the energy, using it for selfish means, the Jeff Bezos of the world, that treat their employees like dirt because they have to make a couple extra billion, that whole mentality of the haves and the have-nots is part of this lower economic system, which is slowly crumbling, in case you haven't noticed. It's actually accelerating its demise as we speak. Within the next 5 to 10 years, I expect a complete economic collapse. Doesn't have to be a scary thing. It can be a wonderful opportunity for people to disengage from this lower density dog-eat-dog competition, I'm better than you, I make more money than you kind of nonsense. So that's one aspect of this. Then we have, as you said, what look like saviors. I don't really believe in saviors. I don't think God is in the savior business. Jesus was an amazing being. He now exists as what we call Lord Sananda in what I call 8th density. And he has brought through many, many teachings, including A Course in Miracles and a book called Love Without End, and many other teachings. Annalise Scarron, the Mormon teacher, and many others have channeled Jesus. And, it's up to us to align with the frequency of these so-called saviors, because they're vibrating at a very high density of pure love, unconditional love of the Creator, pouring into the earth, pouring into all of creation. And they have aligned themselves with God's infinite love and compassion. And so it's up to us to align ourselves with God's limitless love and compassion. And it's a lot like a radio station. Right now, there's a classical music station broadcasting, there's a hip-hop station, a rock station. How come we don't hear them? Because we're not tuned into those frequencies. We don't have our radio device turned to those frequencies. God's love is broadcasting 24/7 on a powerful channel that spans the universe, but we still have to tune in and receive that channel in order to be aware of it. And so that's where free will comes in. We have the free will ability. We can listen to the classical, the hip-hop, the rock station. It's our choice which station we want to listen to. We can listen to the death and destruction channel. We can listen to the government's here to save us and keep us safe because government cares about us channel. It's not a very truthful channel, but we can do that if we want. So the Savior channel is really the channel of the beautiful beings of light who didn't come here to save us, they came here to wake us up. There's a big difference. Waking up means The power and presence of God is within us. We don't have to rely on some teacher external to us in order to give us the darshan and the blessings so that we're saved. Not that there's anything wrong with
So it's not about saving the earth, but human souls.
Well, as George Carlin said, the earth is fine, it'll save itself. It's the human beings that are effed. So, no, it's about learning from those teachers. It's about receiving their darshan, receiving their blessings. But the true teachers are here to empower us. They're here to make themselves unnecessary so that we're not dependent on them.
Okay, so I think our public, our listeners would like to hear about this current events happening now. So how do you see this war happening now in the world?
Well, whatever I say, somebody's going to get offended. That's the nature of these things. But basically what I see, Mr. Putin is an interesting, he's a clever...
It's a big question. Is he a cabal?
He's a clever, shrewd warrior. He's a warrior in the true sense of the word. Now, warrior, what's the root word of warrior? It's war. You know, Lao Tzu and many others, you know, talk about the enlightened warrior. You know, I'm not saying he's enlightened, by the way, but he's much more enlightened than virtually all the other world leaders combined. He's playing chess and they're all playing checkers. That's a favorite quote that I hear a lot. He is not an angel. He is not a savior. He is a human being who's about 40% dark and 60% light. Well, 40% dark, that's a lot of darkness. Yes, he can be influenced by darkness. And when I say darkness, I don't mean like a force that opposes God, because that's an illusion. I mean souls that have chosen to believe in separation, division, chaos, entropy, and war, poverty, misery, and suffering. So he is influenced by so-called dark forces, dark cabal, dark Illuminati, whatever you want to call them. And at the same time, the Westerners, the Western Alliance, which is responsible for this war, in my humble opinion, they're empowering their little puppet Zelensky, who does what he's told by the so-called power elite. And they're all trying to start a bigger war because they want to be in control of humanity, and they figure if we can keep the plebs fighting, you know, it's like the divide and conquer strategy. This is old strategy. It's nothing new. Keep them at each other's throats. Keep the Russians hating the Ukrainians. Keep the Ukrainians hating the Russians. Keep the Western Alliance versus the Eastern Alliance of Russia and China, you know, so that we can keep the conflict going, because that's their agenda. They thrive on conflict. They're dark beings. They thrive on conflict. And ultimately, they're children of God. They have distorted the vibrations of love so much that they appear to be an enemy, a satanic force, an evil force. And so because of that strong belief in evil, they create evil, you know, the power of belief. And those who believe they're powerless and believe they're controlled by the power elite are part of that problem. You know, if you say, oh, no, there's nothing I can do about them. They have all the money. They have all the education. They own the media. They own the medical industry. Well, I'm just a little schmuck. What can I do? You know, that's the mentality they want. They want us to come from that space. And it's tempting to come from that space. You know, when you look at the seeming control they have over all these industries, the churches, the doctors, the universities, you know, virtually every institution on earth is dominated by these maybe 300 beings, as one person says, that we call the Dark Illuminati, you know. But why do we create something like that on Earth? You know, let's go deeper. What is the consciousness that creates this dark Illuminati, this power elite, the dark extraterrestrials?
Okay, you can go on deeper in that. So can you tell us what is the matrix from your perspective?
The matrix is nothing more than the beliefs of society and the structure of society that arises from those beliefs. So if we look at the central core beliefs of society, we have a belief in separation. We have a belief in isolated individuals trying to struggle to survive, which up until the technological revolution, there was a degree of physical struggle, working the fields from sun up till sundown to put enough food on the table, things like that. So we've come a long way. We have new modern technology now. We can call somebody on the phone. They can come and deliver a meal to us and things like that. Of course, that's made a lot of people lazy. They don't even know how to grow their own food and things like that. So there's another, and then there's the AI, artificial intelligence equation also, and that's well, if you read my books, I go into the dark Orions from the Orion star system. They're the ones behind the AI, turning humans into machines, controlling everybody with nanobots and microchips and things like that. So that's a whole nother branch of all of this Matrix. The Matrix movies, of course, they had the blue pill and the red pill, which everybody's talking about. Oh, yeah, I'm red-pilled, and this sort of thing.
No, we're not.
And red pill just means you've woken up to some of the elements of the Matrix. You're not totally awake by any means just by being red-pilled. But it does mean that you're starting to realize, hey, government's not here to keep us safe. They're here to stay in power. And so that's a very rudimentary level of awakening. It's like that's going from first grade to second grade. Oh, first grade, government loves us. Government's here to keep us safe. Oh, level 2, government's not here to save us. They're here to save themselves. They're here to stay in power. And they pretend to like us when elections are coming up. Have you noticed the fuel prices have stayed the same for the last 3 or 4 weeks because the elections are coming up, As soon as the elections are over, boom, I bet you the prices are going to go way up. So that's just one little example of how they're not here to, the masks, the vaccines, the social distancing. It's all pure rubbish. Anybody who has even a rudimentary understanding of biological science knows that, as one person says, wearing a mask to keep out a virus is like erecting a chain link fence to keep out mosquitoes. and so, I don't want to step on other speakers' areas.
I want to go on the deep level of Matrix. So what about dark aliens? And I want to talk later about good aliens, because we don't see them here, and we see much of the bad aliens, bad guys. I talk with people.
Sure.
I often hear from all kind of peoples, all kind of age groups. They see them, they picture them, they have them in their visions, and all bad guys. Where are the good guys?
In the universe at large, the ratio of enlightened, awakened beings is about 80% to the unenlightened, unawakened, or dark extraterrestrials, which is about 20% of the universe. But on Earth, it's kind of reversed. About 80% are the darks and 20% are the lights. And that's because the consciousness of Earth has been about 80% dark, 20% light. Now it's about 75% dark, 25% light. So you're going to attract, the law of attraction, you're going to attract those extraterrestrials who vibrate at your level of consciousness or who are attracted to your level of consciousness. That also goes for astral entities as well. If your primary vibration is fear, anger, guilt, shame, those kind of emotions, you're going to attract dark beings that feed off of those emotions, whether they're in the astral planes or in the physical planes as negative extraterrestrials. So the Earth is about 75% or 80% dark ETs and about 20-25% light ETs. But it's the other way around in the universe at large. There's far more highly evolved civilizations than there are these dark ones that want to control and enslave humanity. So let me name them just for you can compare this with other information you've gotten. We have the dark Orions from the Rigel star system. That's the star on the lower right corner if you're looking from the northern hemisphere. And they are the green scaly reptilians among other groups. There's several species, but the green scaly reptilians are one of the main groups there. They are the ones behind AI and wanting to control everybody, turn everybody into machines, basically enslave everybody. And then there's some dark Sirians from Sirius A and B. And they look a lot like us. but they're very militaristic and very much into domination. They tend to control a lot of the banking system and the billionaires, the oligarchs, whatever you want to call them, power elite. So they're very big on that. That's dark Syrians. There's a few dark Pleiadians, but not that many. There's also the Zeta Reticulans, who are no longer a big presence on the earth because they got what they came here for.
DNA.
They needed our human DNA to keep their race going.
That's why they tested us so many times.
Exactly. Then you have some Andromedans, and they're a mixture of light and dark. And this is all in the books. It's in the Earth Changes and Beyond book. It's in the Earth Awakens book. And it's in the Real History of Earth. Maybe we'll put up a list of the books at the end of the thing. So those are the reasons why there's so many dark extraterrestrials on the Earth, because the consciousness of Earth is so dense compared to many of the planets in the universe. So think of it this way, 20% of all the planets in the universe are darker than Earth, 80% are lighter, if you think of it that way. And there are approximately 5 quintillion intelligent civilizations in the universe, the physical universe, and its related dimensions. And that's, if you think of the idea, there's 100 billion galaxies in the universe and 100 billion stars in our galaxy. And they're saying about 1 in every 1,200 stars has a planet with intelligent life on it. So that's kind of where we get the numbers from. So you could visit a different intelligent civilization every day of the week for years and years and not even scratch the surface of everything that's out there. Just in our sector of the Milky Way galaxy, there's something like 10 million civilizations. So it's a large number. Well, you do the math, you know, you can do the math and figure it out.
So we are them, is it right? So we came from up there.
We are them in many, many different ways. We are a conglomeration of every place we've been. It's in our DNA, the part that humans call junk DNA, which is far from junk. Nature doesn't make junk. That's one of the biggest pieces of rubbish I've seen. So we are a combination of many of these star systems. In our DNA, it holds a record of the different star systems we've visited. Now, most of us have been involved in a series of earthly incarnations. Some of us have incarnated a few times on Earth and then a few times other places and then come back to Earth for a few more. Others have just had a straight series of earthly incarnations without going to other places in between. It really depends on what you're here to learn. Every soul is unique and different, even though we're all one. And some souls are here to learn about war, and they're on the front lines of these conflicts. Other souls are here to learn about peace. They could walk through a battlefield and perhaps be unaffected if they're at a high enough vibration. So that's a whole other topic we can go into if there's time.
Yes, I hope so. You had a great channeling a couple of days earlier on your how can we call it, seminars. So would you like to talk about that? What are some news you got recently? We have, we do a bunch of trainings we call the timeline healing technique. We have like 3 levels plus a teacher's training. And then we do various workshops. One of them is how to transcend fear. Another one is how to transcend the matrix, which is probably the one you're referring to. That was a couple of weeks ago. And so basically, it's a combination of metaphysics, psychology, spirituality, a little bit of physics, a little bit of science, and all kind of blended together. But the central idea of all the teachings is that we are powerful, creative, spiritual beings. And so my purpose in doing what I'm doing is to help people realize that, not just to know it intellectually, because that's fairly easy to grasp. Oh yeah, okay, we're created in the image and likeness of God. We have the same abilities that God has. But then we think, oh, I'm struggling to pay my bills. I don't get along with my spouse. You know, the government's trying to tax me into oblivion or whatever. And how can I be a powerful, creative, spiritual being if that's my earthly reality?
So the idea is to find a way out of that earthly reality, not necessarily going into denial and trying to pretend that there's nothing wrong and that everything is love and light. That's not it. That's not it. But how do we actually learn to transcend the matrix? And the first thing we have to do is do it emotionally and mentally. So we stop identifying with the polarized viewpoint. I'm not anti-Russian or anti-Ukraine. I am neutral. I've stepped out and I can see bad behavior on both sides. And I will be happy to call out the bad behavior because, you know, we're not saying that we should accept bad behavior, but we're saying that we don't identify with the polarized viewpoints of this world. We see them, we understand them, but we don't identify with them. That's the big difference. So that's freeing ourselves emotionally and mentally from the matrix by not getting caught in the duality, the Maya, the Leela, the illusion, as the Eastern teachings would call it. The Vedantic teachings talk about the realms of duality and non-duality. So we're talking basically about non-duality, how to extricate ourselves from points of view which polarize us. Now, physically, it's a lot harder to do that. You know, maybe they can force us to pay taxes. Maybe they can, you know, withhold the distribution of food and supplies, you know, to people during times of war. There's a lot of things they can do to us physically, but we're not these vehicles. This is like a car that we drive, this vehicle. And so we stop identifying with the vehicle. We take care of it. We give it good nutrition. And we honor the fact that this is the vehicle that we have chosen to experience this dimension. But we're not identified with it. We don't think, I am this vehicle. Just that's as ridiculous as thinking, I am my passport or identification card or whatever. Of course, that's silly.
So did your spirit guides told you something interesting about all this situation? What is the higher viewpoint of all this happening?
First of all, my higher guides.
This position.
Yeah. First of all, my higher guides are not sitting up on a cloud somewhere, looking down at those poor, miserable humans in that prison planet called Earth. That is not their perception. They look across to us. They see us as these beautiful, magnificent beings who have simply deluded ourselves into thinking that we are powerless, helpless little pawns in some elite's chess game. So the first thing is the attitude they have, which is that they respect us. They do not talk down to us. They do not patronize us. And if you get a spirit guide that does that sort of thing, who's judgmental, who's talking about that evil cabal, we have to just, you know, like there's a lot of anger involved, those are not highly evolved beings. Now, of course, they're aware that they believe in evil and that they are committing evil acts. Of course, they're aware of that, but they're not coming from judgment. They're coming from neutrality. They're coming from, how can we help these beautiful, magnificent human beings to free themselves from the chains of tyranny, from the chains of totalitarianism, dictatorship, whatever words you want to use.
So, do they have any advice?
Well, the first advice is to look in the mirror. Was it Michael Jackson said, I'm going to start with the man in the mirror. Gandhi said that it starts with a change in consciousness. We have to start by looking for the inner terrorist, looking for the inner enemy, the inner satanic force, the inner evil, those judgmental thoughts and feelings which separate us from each other. So we have to start by going within, whether that's through meditation, through yoga, through metaphysical teachings, going to an ashram, you know, learning from different teachers, becoming aware that we are more than this body-mind personality complex we call the ego, and that the purpose of life is not to get the most toys or oppress other people. And it comes down to, what is the difference between true power and false power? And false power is the belief that we have to control and manipulate and oppress and enslave others in order to get what we want. That's not true power. True power is the recognition that God is within, Why would I need to control anybody or dominate anybody if I know that the power is within me? I would have no need of that. So the first thing we have to do is recognize the difference between true power and false power, and that true power comes from within, and the only way we're going to access it is to go within, to meditate, to examine what's in our subconscious mind, and there's various techniques for doing that, including timeline healing, and to work on clearing our subconscious negative programs and beliefs. Sorry, but it's hard work, but we have to do it. I mean, that's the bottom line. I've been doing this for 45 years. And it's about going into the subconscious, discovering what is creating war, poverty, misery, and suffering. Why do we have war, poverty, misery, and suffering on the earth? And so it's about going into our own consciousness, finding our own core negative beliefs, turning them around using various metaphysical principles, using timeline healing, theta healing, past life regression, hypnotherapy, psychotherapy, various healing modalities, and just really doing the work on ourselves. And so that is how to turn things around.
Escape matrix.
To escape the matrix.
Now we got to the timelines, and people are asking, will there be a war? Will there be a global light civilization here? So they need to understand that
I'm optimistic.
Can you explain us the timelines?
Yeah.
And
I'm optimistic because I've been told by my guidance that this particular war is going to be over by May. It's not going to be the start of World War III. That's what I've been told by my guidance. Now, there's a lot of free will variations on Earth, so we cannot be 100% accurate in all of our predictions, and especially with timelines. My guides originally predicted that a lot of the things that are happening now were going to happen maybe 5 years earlier. And especially the economic collapse. They thought by 2020 there'd be a complete economic collapse. Now they're saying 2025. It looks like it's in motion, like a slow motion train wreck. So there's the events themselves, they're pretty accurate with, but getting the timeline right is tricky. They said by 2030 we were going to be in the glorious new age. Now they're saying 2035 to maybe 2040. Why has there been a delay in the positive manifestation? And the reason is very simple. 3/4 of humanity is thinking negatively. They're stuck in fear. They're dominated by negative thoughts, and they are powerful, creative, spiritual beings as well. So it is taking more time to bring about the shift, to bring about the awakening. To the upper levels of consciousness, 5 or 10 years is nothing. It's like that's insignificant. It's a blink of an eye. To us here on Earth, that seems like a painful delay. It's like every year that people are dying in war and poverty and misery and starvation is another year of tragedy. So it really depends on what level you're coming from. So the timelines, I think it's going to be about 2040 before we really have this ascended reality firmly in place, the new golden age of peace and prosperity that's supposed to last for 1,000 years. I think it'll be firmly in place by the year 2040. Maybe there'll still be a few things to work out, a few blemishes to heal, and maybe it'll be 2050 before it's really the whole Earth is fundamentally transformed. People are already exiting. The guide said by the year 2020, the population of Earth is going to peak around 8 billion and then start to decline. They seem to have hit that one pretty accurately. The only part of the world that's still growing in population is Africa and Asia. The rest of the world is now declining in population. Deaths are exceeding births in most of the so-called Western world. I would say 75 to 80% of the Earth, the population is already starting to decline. And this is due to many, many factors. The depletion of sperm in men, 50% reduction in the last 50 years due to GMOs, plastics, radiation, contamination, heavy metals. About 10%, they're promising us no more than 10% of humanity will die from war or famine created by war, or things like that. 10%. Nuclear weapons are not allowed to be used. The higher-ups have made this very clear. They've already intervened 5 times in our nuclear weapons programs to keep us from blowing ourselves up. They're not going to let us blow ourselves up this time. So nuclear weapons are not allowed. They are intervening somewhat with chemical weapons and electromagnetic weapons. Maybe not as totally as they are with nuclear, but they are, and they're actually looking at GMOs.
We're energy producers for unseen elites, interdimensional beings. I don't think they want to have 6 billion people less. That's a lot of less energy.
You're absolutely right. They feed off our negative emotions. It's like a smorgasbord. They go down the street and see all these fear thoughts, all these anger thoughts, all these guilt thoughts. And it's like, oh my God, it's a smorgasbord. It's a buffet. Let's just help ourselves to all these negative emotions. Exactly.
Okay, I have one question which can be added on what we are talking now. Is reincarnation cycles corrupt? And how? And is it manipulated by dark forces so they can keep us in constant suffering, pain, war, and so on throughout many lives to generate energy? And is that wheel going to be broken so we can freely go?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, and I looked at it many years ago and came up with an answer. First of all, if your vibration is more than what I call 4.25 in consciousness, that means you're more than a quarter of the way into 4th density consciousness, then that does not apply to you. And so most of the people I work with, that doesn't apply to. If you are below 4.25 in consciousness, you are at the risk of having your reincarnational cycle hijacked by lower dimensional entities. They can kind of trick you into going into lower astral planes and trying to convince you they're higher astral planes and things like that. And however, that doesn't violate any of the existing laws, because once again, if you're at a lower vibration, you attract lower dimensional entities and you're going to have lower dimensional experiences. And being trapped on the wheel of reincarnation is a lower density experience. And as long as you are riddled with guilt and shame and humiliation and judgment and beating yourself up constantly and all the other negative emotions, you're going to keep reattracting those experiences over and over again through the incarnational cycle. Yes, that's one of the reasons we're here, to help free people from the wheel of reincarnation. But there are a lot of young souls on planet Earth that aren't ready for that. You bring them hard scientific evidence that, let's say, the government is not here to save you, and their eyes glass over, their head rolls back, and they say, oh, you're just a conspiracy theory nut. And yet this is hard data right from this very government that's claiming to want to save you.
You have a very interesting book. I think it's the last one. Integration of the soul. So in that book it's said that our souls are fragmented, and perhaps the whole humanity. And before we go up, we need to collect all those parts into one big unity.
Yeah, actually it's my 4th book. I have 7 books. Yeah.
So, okay, I stopped there. So throughout our lives, with traumas, with bad decisions, we lost our parts. Our souls, our abilities, strengths, everything which is good in us, and now we're just like a little bit empty. Yeah, so what's happening there, and how can we heal ourselves in one big unity as individual, and how can we heal the whole humanity with all its traumas?
Yeah, that soul integration is one of the techniques for coming into your power, for recognizing your powerful creative spiritual being. And in order to do soul integration, you have to recognize that our souls become fragmented through intense trauma, through deep, intimate relationships. It's not just negative experiences where we tend to fragment. And one way to tell if you're fragmented is, do you think about certain people or places more than makes sense to think about them? You know, maybe you met somebody and it wasn't a particularly significant connection, but then you keep thinking about that person, and it's not that you're soulmates or that you're attracted to them necessarily, but there's something there, and maybe there's somebody that you have some of your soul fragments embedded in that person. And so there are techniques for retrieving the soul fragments. They're very simple techniques that you learn in the soul integration workshops. And then if you're highly fragmented, it's hard to get off the wheel of reincarnation. You'll keep coming back over and over. Now, I know it's Dolores Cannon and others talk about sovereign souls versus maybe they're non-player characters or extras on the set, you know, kind of.
And you can tell us later or now, what do you think about organ portals?
Yeah, that's another name they call them. It's kind of a strange name, but I understand what they're talking about, but I don't think they're explaining it very well. These are souls who are so fragmented that they don't have enough of their primary pieces together to be able to do the proper reincarnational cycle, which is go up into the higher dimensions, you have their life review, and then come back in as a sovereign soul again. That's how sovereign souls reincarnate. These are fragmented souls, and so you can actually have more than one human being that belongs to the same parent part of the soul. Now, I realize this gets a little technical and hard to understand, but you have a parent part up here, and that part ends up splitting into multiple souls down on Earth. So you have sovereign souls who have the majority of their pieces integrated, and then you have fragmented souls or organic portals or non-player characters or whatever you want to call them, who do not have enough of their original soul material to have really any sense of power. They're kind of the automatons, the zombies, if you want to use that phrase, who just blindly do what they're told and who don't really think for themselves, and they have very little power. And but they do exist. They're just fragmented, so it's not like they're figments of our imagination that are used to fill out the set. You know, that's a misunderstanding.
Okay, but in classical metaphysics, we think they are like matrix agents, agent Smiths.
Agents of the agents of the
by
matrix.
Dark beings to control our emotions, to feed of us.
To a degree,
they're also in the politics.
To a degree, that's true. This is a holographic universe. This is a video game, a high-resolution video game that we're in. And everything is a holographic projection of a single point called a singularity, which the scientists call this the Big Bang. We started as this singularity, and then everything projected out from a central point. And the truth is, everything is still a single point. It's an illusion that point is separate from this point. And, you know, we're all connected, everything is connected, and the whole universe is contained within each one of us. In fact, every proton of every atom contains the entire universe. It's the holographic principle. The whole is contained within the part, which is a hard concept for our intellectual minds to grasp. So yes, you could say we're all just holographic images. We're all the way we perceive ourselves is an illusion. Not that we're an illusion, that's not true, but the way we perceive ourselves is an illusion. There's a very good, important distinction to make. We are not solid. This is vibrating energy with a lot of empty space in it. We've proven that scientifically, but it looks solid, it feels solid.
So I got a knowledge that, like experience, not just a knowledge, that I exist in this moment in other dimensions. So while I'm here, I'm having something up there, maybe drinking, maybe fighting, maybe whatever. So sometimes I get hurt there and I have like a headache, and sometimes I'm studying there, so here I'm in the mood for studying, and so on and so on. So do we live in the same time here and perhaps somewhere up in higher dimensions?
The answer is yes, but it's even a little bit more complicated than that. I have an XYZ axis in my book, The Mystery of Time, that kind of tries to describe it. We have, first of all, 12 dimensions. We exist simultaneously in 12 different dimensions. So there's that level of parallel realities. Then we have what are called phase-shifted realities, which are like the Z-axis, where we have these parallel realities that are not quite the same as the one that we're experiencing. And there was a TV show called Sliders that came out many years ago, which kind of attempted to illustrate that idea. Deja vus. Imagine you go to a party and you have the distinct feeling that you intimately know everybody at that party, and yet you've never met them before in this life. You know your dreams, and you didn't have a prophetic dream that you were going to meet them. You know your past lives, and none of your past lives have those beings in it. And yet you know that you know them from some other time, place, or dimension. That's the Z-axis, the parallel realities going this way. And then you have the Y-axis, which are the levels of vibration, and that's where the 12 dimensions are. And the X-axis is linear reality, past, present, future by the clock, where we've recorded this event happened, and then this event, and this event, and this event. So we kind of have these three dimensions of time, X, Y, Z, represented on a Cartesian coordinate system. And this is frontiers of physics. There's a few physicists that are exploring what I'm talking about. So most people don't understand this, and that's understandable because it is so leading edge. But it's the idea that time is multidimensional, not just space, you know.
So is there some kind of primer timeline or primer dimension? Maybe in one parallel reality, I don't know, maybe a woman, and in someone I'm maybe dead, and so on. So which one is the most important?
Well, we
need to fight in all of those.
We have what's called probable and possible timelines. Possible timelines, there's a possible timeline where I turn into a blue blob. But it's highly unlikely I'm going to turn into a blue blob. There's a more probable reality that I'm going to pick up that drink and have a drink of it. It's not for sure, but it's highly likely that I'll do that. And whatever you give the most time, energy, attention, and focus to becomes closer and closer to the dominant reality. Like right now, it's real close to the dominant reality that I'm going to pick that up and take a drink. Still not in the dominant reality yet, but the more time, attention, and focus I put on that object, it becomes part of the dominant reality. And now at a certain time on the clock, I took a drink. So I know it's a silly example, but it kind of illustrates the point. The only thing that actually moves in creation is awareness. Everything else is like a series of stills. This is Julian Barber, the scientist from Oxford, his theories on the idea that we're living in a series of stills, or a high-resolution motion picture, where once every Planck second, which is about 10 to the minus 44 seconds, the universe recreates itself, blinks on and off, and it looks different every Planck second because our awareness shifts. We shift, and so we view the realities from a different vantage point. And it happens so quickly that we don't realize that's what we're doing. So that's another interesting theory, which seems to be real.
What is the primer form of human being before it comes to the earth? Where and how do we live?
Well, we are spirits. We are spirits. And we create a body that is appropriate to whatever level or dimension we want to experience as spirits. So here we live in a third and fourth density world, so we have a third and fourth density body in order to experience it. Now, if we were in level 6 as spirits, we would create a sixth density body to experience level 6. And this goes up to level 7, the soul body to experience level 7. Above that, there's a different process, which is very difficult to describe because we don't have anything in our earthly languages to really describe what happens beyond level 7. I attempt to do so in the Soul Integration book. I talk about the oversoul, the monad, and the God levels of our being. And I use this idea of soul division, which is not the same as soul fragmentation. And it's the idea that we come from, let's say, a monad, and then there's 12 oversouls come out of the monad, and then 12 souls come out of each oversoul. So there's 144 souls now coming out of the monad. And
so are those our soulmates or not?
Well, those are what we call soul family. Now, soulmate is a generic name for anybody we feel a deep soul connection with. But some of our soulmates are what we call soul family. That means we share the same oversoul or monad or 10th level God being or whatever it is. And this is all explained in soul integration. And so we live in a base 12 universe. And if you look, somehow we've managed to keep that with our calendar and our clock, with 12 hours and things like that. But basically it's a 12-dimensional universe. And souls split into 12s, generally. There are exceptions. There are weird things that happen, that are different. But by and large, 99% of all of us are part of a 12-level matrix. We have an oversoul, and there's 11 other souls that are part of that oversoul besides ourself. And then we have 11 other oversouls that are part of our monad besides ourselves. It kind of works like that. I actually am oversimplifying, even though it doesn't seem that simple. So yeah, we are all descendants of the one God. And then there are 12-dimensional creator gods that come out of the Godhead, which are powerful beings capable of creating entire universes. This universe was actually created by one of the creator gods. Now, that does not contradict the idea that God created the heavens and the earth, because when you're at level 12, you are essentially one with God. For all intents and purposes, you're one with God. But there's an aspect of the oneness of God, which we call a creator God, which created this particular universe that we're living in. So this is all in the Soul Integration book.
And what about multi-universe theory? So there is billions of universes.
I've been told
there then billions of God creators?
I've been told that there's about 100,000 universes in the what's called the omniverse or the multiverse. There's different names for it.
Just 100?
100,000 is what I've heard.
100,000, okay.
Yeah, about 100,000. So it seems like a finite number.
Yes, that's the strange. We all think that universe is infinite.
I know that there are alternate universes, but I don't know much about them. This is where my knowledge hasn't yet gone. Level 12 beings are able to access other universes. And I don't have very much of my level 12 knowledge intact to be able to go into detail on other universes. I just know that they exist.
So what about dark beings? Can they be also 12th dimension?
In my system,
beings?
Dark beings are only able to occupy the first 6 levels: the physical, emotional, mental, astral, etheric, and causal planes. When you get to the soul planes, there is no more darkness. Because darkness is simply a misunderstanding of God's loving light. It's like putting a shield up in front of the sun and claiming the sun's not shining. The sun is still shining, but you have placed a dark shield in front of it so it doesn't appear to be shining to you. So darkness is a lot like that shield. And it seems very real in this world. But ultimately, it's not real. There's only God's loving light. Everything else is illusion, as David Icke would say.
And ultimately, what is our soul purpose? The greatest soul purpose?
To grow and evolve into the levels and dimensions that are dormant within our being, that have not yet been developed or activated. Right now, we've activated 4 levels out of 12, most of us. Few have started to activate level 5. And some are stuck in level 3. They haven't really activated level 4 yet. So we have like 8 levels that we haven't yet activated. They exist in non-local time. It's like we're already enlightened. We're already 12-dimensional beings in non-local time. But in linear time, it looks like it's somewhere in the future where we evolve into those levels. So it's a great paradox, really, that we're already enlightened, but we have to uncover the layers of illusion we've placed over our awareness of who we are. That's another way to state it.
So the purpose is to become a God creator.
The purpose is to realize that we are already a God creator. That's the purpose of this evolutionary process, to uncover the truth of who we are. Because it's already true, we just haven't realized it yet. That's why they call it self-realization. You're realizing who you really are. We're already enlightened, but we don't realize it, and so we don't experience it because we haven't realized it.
So you told us something about ascension process. So can you go a little bit deeper into that?
Yes. There's a thing called the Ascension Template. And the Ascension Template is a sophisticated computer program which converts our cells into what I call the light body format, or the crystal light body format, the silicon crystal light body format. Actually, the carbon atoms become silicon atoms. They create a new shell of electrons, basically. And this is a very complicated process. It's not well understood. Only a few human beings have gone through this process so far. But I've been told by my guidance that eventually there will be somewhere between 10 and 30 million human beings who will go through this ascension process.
Is this fifth or sixth or seventh density?
Fifth density.
Conscious?
Fifth density.
Oh, that's not so much.
No. Level 6, there's a thing called the Merkaba vehicle of light, which happens at level 6. A lot of people don't understand what the Merkaba is. And it's a causal body crystalline light form that develops when you go from level 5 to level 6. Right now we're going from level 4 to level 5. So we're going from the carbon-based mortal body into the silicon-based immortal body. If we don't die in the meantime and leave our bodies behind, which most people do, obviously. So that's called the Ascension Template, the program that arranges all of that. And it's a very sophisticated program because you can't just translate all at once, even though they talk about that in the Bible. Those are probably people being beamed aboard spaceships when you see instantaneous stuff like that. This doesn't really happen instantaneously. Well, it does in non-local time because everything happens at once in non-local time. But in linear time, it is a process. We've got 100 trillion cells. If you try to convert them too quickly, the body's going to attack itself. The autoimmune system's going to kick in and say, oh, these are weird cells that are now coming in. We better attack them, get rid of them. The new silicon-based immortal cells. But if you introduce them slowly according to a sophisticated algorithm, you can get the body to accept them, and then gradually the body gets transformed into this higher form of light. And at some point, you become luminescent, you start radiating light, and at some point you can actually disappear out of what we normally perceive. Now, there was a Star Trek, The Next Generation episode, where this guy was the first of his kind to turn into light, and at the end of the episode, he turned into a light being and was able to travel through the cosmos in his light body. So that is very, Gene Roddenberry was a visionary. He had a lot of interesting stuff. So this is not a new idea. The physics of it is complicated. I explained just a tiny bit of it in Soul Integration, the book. I haven't been given all the details. Some of the details I have been given are called DNA keys and codes, the light keys and codes. I know Greg Braden and others have talked about the light keys and codes. Jim Hurtak, the guy who wrote the Keys of Enoch, talks about the light keys and codes. So I was shown the light keys and codes in a meditation, and literally these are the precursors of DNA. So we're talking about how you go from undifferentiated source energy down to individual light forms. It's a process of differentiation. And it starts out as what we call light packets, or packets of energy, quanta of energy, that then gets converted into these DNA keys and codes, which later get converted into what the Hebrew alphabet calls the fire letters. The ancient Hebrew fire letters. They look like flames, and they are derivations of the DNA molecule. So there's a level where the DNA molecule, it comes from the DNA keys and codes and the fire letters. And then, of course, you have the chemical molecules, you know, the carbon rings and all that. That's the next level down. And then you have the human form coming out of the protein chains or DNA.
I have one question. So, isn't it just easier to die and then put your consciousness in some higher density body?
It's easier, yes, and that's why it's has been the preferred method for a long time, except it's not very efficient, because every time you reincarnate, you have to learn how to walk and talk all over again. You get reprogrammed all over again, mostly negative, by well-meaning parents who aren't very good parents in most cases. And that's very inefficient to have to go through that over and over again. So getting off the wheel of reincarnation and just going directly into the higher dimensions, you don't have to recreate all that. And you can stay as long as you want in the immortal crystal light body. You don't have to die every 80 or 90 years and then create a new body.
And what happens if we get bored of being in that state?
Well, then you have the ability to travel to other worlds. You can travel to other worlds. There's 5 quintillion civilizations you can visit, and there's other dimensions, there's celestial planes, and there's so much love in some of these higher planes that you would never ever get bored. It's a type of love that just, it's like living in a fresh new state every moment. It's like the first time you ever saw a rainbow or something like that. It's like, wow, only it's much more than a rainbow. So there's no boredom. Boredom is confined to the lower dimensions.
So did you had a personal experience about higher worlds? And how do you see everything they're showing to you? Do you see mentally? Do you have outer body experience? And how do you perceive all those?
Back in the 1970s, the mid-1970s is when I started my process. I had a lot of visions back then of higher worlds, higher dimensions, things like that. And over the course of the last 45 years, of course, I've added additional information. I've had experiences of higher beings coming to me and explaining who they are and what they're here for and giving downloads of knowledge. I had an experience in 1976 where I felt like the top of my head had been opened up and all this knowledge was just poured in. Of course, it wasn't really the brain, but it felt like that at the time. And I saw a lot of the things that are happening now on the earth back in the mid-70s. And I started structuring my life at that time. I started teaching part-time metaphysics and, going to meditation retreats. At one point, I was going to metaphysical groups 4 nights a week in Silicon Valley, where I was an IT person. And eventually, I started more and more to do this work full-time. It wasn't really until about 17 or 18 years ago when I actually started doing this work full-time for good. Up until then, I had, periodically gone back into IT, and then I taught math and science for a while at a high school and things like that. So, yeah, it was a process, and it's still a process. But at this point, my consciousness is fairly consistent. It doesn't vary too much from day to day. I'm aware continuously of the presence of God operating through me. I have a human ego. I have a human imperfect self. Every human being has a human imperfect self. I am not putting myself up on a pedestal as anybody's savior, that I'm beyond human condition. I'm not beyond the human condition.
So but you have negative emotions?
I have negative emotions, but it's like this is my little human self with its negative emotions, and this is my consciousness out here.
It's just looking down there.
No, and it's not even looking down. It's more like a bubble, and contained within this large bubble called my higher self is this lower self or human ego with its fears, hopes, dreams, desires. So it's not that I've eliminated or denied my human self. I've simply gotten larger than my human self, which is transcendence. Transcendence means to go beyond. So my reality is more here, but it includes my little human self with its human emotions and, its little mistakes that it might make, like knocking over the drink or something like that. Doesn't happen very often, but it still can happen. And, imperfections in the physical body, blemish here and there. It's not yet immortal.
So, is it wrong to be like monks, just going somewhere in the cave and eliminating everything good, what is here on the earth from our lives?
Some people are drawn to a monastic lifestyle or a hermetic lifestyle, and if that's what you're drawn to, then that's great. Most of us are here to bring higher truths into the everyday world. So we're here to have families, business, interactions with third and fourth density humans. So most of us are not going to sit up in a cave and meditate, but some of us do. And
it's not wrong.
It's not wrong. Yes, if you're doing it because you don't want to look at something within yourself and you think that escaping to the Himalayan mountains and sitting in a cave is somehow going to keep you from dealing with earthly responsibilities, then yes, I would say that's not going to serve you. You'll probably die up there or get too cold, come back down, whatever. But if you are truly guided to do that, then it's fine. It's not escapism if it is coming from a higher perspective. But, there are a lot of people who think that transcendence means running away from your problems. And, there's people waiting for the spaceships to come and rescue us.
Will that happen? Okay, I'm hearing a lot about, I can call it a false new age. Big spaceships destroying Kabbalah, alien other dark ships, and just waiting to pick us and go somewhere, and all other stories which are for me just fake positivism and implementing pacifism in the people. Don't work on yourself, don't fight, don't do nothing, everything will be fine, just be comfortable.
I agree. It's escapism, and that's not how the higher beings work. Now, I'm not saying that they won't occasionally relocate a human being who's really crucial to the awakening process. Yes, they have the ability to do that. But if you're waiting for the ships to come and take you off the earth because it's getting too hard to live down here, you're going to be waiting a long time. That is not how they operate. And yes, there are some lower dimensional extraterrestrials who want to do that. They want to be the saviors. They want to, have loyal followers and things like that. And so there's a caution there. And some of these channels are channeling fourth density Syrians or fourth density Orions who are claiming to be the Galactic Federation or something like that. And the real Galactic Federation doesn't do that. They're higher dimensional beings. They're not here to run our race for us. A coach or a guide does not run the race for you. They coach you, they guide you, they prepare you to run the race, but you have to run the race. So we have to do the work on ourselves. We can't expect the space brothers and sisters to that's why the questions about Savior, I made it real clear. We're not here to ask somebody to save us, whether it's Jesus, whether it's Muhammad or Buddha, whether it's the space brothers and sisters from Ashtar or some other place. They're not here to save us. And I think we need to make that really clear that we have to clean up our own messes. Yes, they will help us. They will give us new technologies if we're ready to use them responsibly, like zero-point energy. And that's another thing my guides missed on the date a little bit. They said by 2020, we'd probably have zero-point energy.
Maybe we have, but it's just not.
But we can't get it out into a world full of negativity because people believe in lack and scarcity. They believe there's not enough energy. My latest book is called The Secrets of Unlimited Energy. And so I've been talking all day. I don't know how much longer my voice will last, but
a little bit. A little bit more.
A little bit more, yes. So 0 point energy is real. It's based on the quantum fluctuations at 0 degrees Kelvin. That's why it's called 0 point. And you can tap into it. You can... there is absolutely no need for these energy wars and for people to go without things they need because there is an almost unlimited amount of energy available to us if we can learn how to tap into it. So the book, The Secrets of Unlimited Energy, kind of gives us a way to tap into it. It says, well, this is how you tap into the 0 point field. And there's a little bit of mathematics in it, not much, very little. So don't let that scare you away if you're thinking.
So is that book a good guide for the future young people exploring unlimited energy? Because I know a lot of them here in Serbia, and they're just trying to grasp something.
Well, I know there's people trying to work on Tesla's patents and inventions, and some of them I think are having some success with Tesla's material. Tesla discovered radiant energy, which is part of the 0 point field. It's the energy that leaks out of the atomic structure into the surrounding vacuum. And you can tap it as it emanates or radiates from the atomic nucleus. And it's about 10 to the 6 joules per cubic centimeter, which is about, well, if you took all the electronics in this room and put them into the size of a sugar cube, that you'd still have room left over in that sugar cube for more radiant energy. So it's a lot of energy. But the 0 point itself is 10 to the 94th power joules per cubic centimeter approximately. That's the number 10 that's number 1 with 94 zeros after it. A huge number. So when I say we live in a sea of almost infinite energy, well, 10 to the 94th power, that's more than the number of atoms in the physical universe. It's a huge number. So that nobody ever has to go without fuel, heat, air conditioning, food, all the other things that are made from energy. We have no shortage of energy.
So what do you think? Do world governments have that technology and they don't want to give us? So I just told once, so if Russia wants to save the world, please give us free energy, technology for healing, maybe knowledge about ETs and so on. That would be much better than waging wars.
Absolutely, except that most people's consciousness is not yet at a place to be able to accept that. And there are people right now that would like to use 0 point energy for weapons. And, you know, the higher-ups are not going to reveal all of the secrets of unlimited energy if they think it's going to fall into the hands of those who want to build weapons out of it. First of all, it's not going to work. If you're in a negative energy field, it's not going to work because it's a quantum level energy source, and the observer affects the observed. This is basic principle of quantum physics. And so if I think it's going to fail, that the thoughts of failure are going to go out into the quantum realm and they're going to affect the experiment. Because you're getting real close to the level of actual consciousness, what we call consciousness units. Sort of like Planck units, only this is consciousness units. And right now we are emanating consciousness units. I look from up here, but it's from our whole being. And so your expectations of reality are shaping the way you experience reality through these consciousness units, interacting with other parts of reality. So the book goes into a lot of that stuff.
Okay, so can you just tell us who are you talking with? Ko su utemeljitelji? What's the name in English? Founders. Who are the?
I have several spirit guides. The founders are the level 12 beings that co-authored the books with me, that assisted me in writing the books. And they are beings from level 12. They look like blue-white stars to me, but they have no form. They're formless. And they come through me using telepathic transmission, which is similar to conscious channeling, except that I only let a little bit of their energy into my body because the frequency is too high for this body to assimilate very much of their energy. And then I also work with my personal spirit guide, Leah, who's a level 6 being. And I work with the Arcturians, who are level 7 beings. I work with Lord Sananda, who's a level 8 being. And I occasionally work with Isis and Thoth, who are level 7 and 8 beings. But mostly I work with the founders, the Arcturians, Lord Sananda, and Leah. So those are the beings I work with. Once in a while, I've tuned into Archangel Michael, but I generally stay with the small group of beings that, and this is for safety reasons, among other things.
Okay. Can be a channeling become corrupt?
Absolutely. Most channeling is corrupt, in my humble opinion. There are a couple of channels. I won't mention any names. I think you know who they are. The one that's been waiting for the spaceships for the last 25 years. And then there's another one who said, oh, they're going to materialize in the corporate boardrooms and force the corporate executives to change their policies at big corporations and things like that. That's pure bunk. That's not how they operate. Maybe there are ETs that want to do those things, but they're not very highly evolved. They don't understand free will. They're interfering in our free will if they're doing things like that. So I would run the other direction when I see a channel that, oh, they're gonna materialize in the corporate boardrooms and force companies like Monsanto and Nestle to change their ways, or BlackRock and Vanguard, I guess, are the latest ones that are the evil corporations. So that's not how they operate. And there are a lot of so-called Galactic Federation channels that are distorting the messages. They're not getting accurate information. And I have in my books, a 10-step discernment process to go through to discern whether you're getting higher vibrational beings or you're getting imposters. If you take care of yourself and you protect yourself, you will not get imposters. But a lot of people take shortcuts. They had a couple drinks before they started the channeling or whatever, and they're not using due diligence. They're not taking care of themselves, and so they're getting compromised.
So what about demons and angels, archangels? Here in the Serbia, we hear a lot about them, and we have a lot of channelings from them. Maybe not, of course. Do they exist, and who is the counterpart of angels? What do you think about demonic presence?
Well, demons are beings in the astral or etheric planes, usually not the celestial planes. In fact, they're not in the celestial planes. They've fallen. They're called fallen angels. They're in the lower planes, and maybe they've been in the higher planes at different times, and they got mesmerized by the lower planes and got sucked into the lower planes and started taking on the attributes of the lower planes. And so demons are nothing more than beings in the astral and etheric planes that have embraced the belief in separation, the idea that there's an adversary to God, that there's an opposing force to God. And some of them have created a lot of mischief, a lot of mayhem. Lucifer was a being of light, but he didn't balance it with love. So it was a harsh, intellectual kind of light, and he made emotions wrong, and that's what his problem was. That's why he became, quote, a demon for a period of time. He's since come back to the light. And there's others that are still in a dark state. So there's a lot of demons. The archangels are beautiful light beings. There's some people who are channeling demons and claiming to be archangels, which gives the archangels a bad name. But Archangel Michael is a light being. He made mistakes a long time ago in his process, but he's fully of the light at this point.
What kind of dimensions do they exist in?
Demons exist in levels 3, 4, and 5, basically. Lower astral, middle astral, and upper astral planes, and into the lower etheric planes.
And angels and archangels?
Angels are in level 7 primarily, and archangels in level 8 primarily.
Oh, so we have much stronger beings like founders.
And then the founders are level 12.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So are they something like creators of universe?
Yeah. Yeah, well, the creator gods and the founders are essentially the same, same level of beings. And they're capable of creating entire universes. And they say we are equal to them. We just haven't activated those levels of ourselves yet. They're lying dormant. Like the oak tree, the acorn, has the blueprint of an oak tree inside it. But until it germinates and, and grows from a tiny, fragile plant into a stronger and stronger plant, it doesn't reach its full potential.
I have the last questions. Last question, if you want to tell us something which you think it's important and we didn't talk about it. And the second one, how do you see this area, Balkans, Serbia, in the future times?
Well, this is my favorite area to do my work. I mean, Ukraine and Russia are also part of my work, and I'm still working with them, though obviously not on the level I was before this conflict began. But yeah, I do Serbia, I do Croatia, I do sometimes Slovenia, Bulgaria, Romania. This whole region is my primary area. I mean, I obviously do the United States, and I've done a little bit of Canada and a few other places. But mostly this is my area of expertise. Now I'm working with Latvia also. And I find that the Balkan region, despite the wars and the poverty and the corruption in government, which is everywhere, people here seem to be more sincere about working on themselves. They're not as, the word is jaded, they're not as spoiled by all the flash and hyperbole and nonsense that's going on in the West with their 72 genders and the rest of that silly nonsense. They're more real. People here are more real, in my opinion. Of course, they've still got the problems we all have, but I think people here, there's more people here who sincerely want to grow involved. I have to give Vladan credit too, because he's really worked hard to bring people together. This is my 11th year of coming to Belgrade. And so and it was very well attended this year.
See each other next time in one year. So we will do this again.
Right, exactly.
I hope so.
And my website will be listed at the bottom of the page, www.salrachele.com. And you can order my books from the website. Most of them are ebooks. I have a few hard copies.
Okay, we have your copies in our...
we have the Serbian translations that Vladan has made available to people.
We have them in bookshops.
And they are in some of the bookshops here.
Your books can be bought everywhere, I think.
Yeah. So you can get the Serbian copies and then a bunch of other stuff on my website. You can look at my schedule of where I'm going to be and stuff like that, which is updating a lot right now due to the conflicts, because I was planning on being in Ukraine and Russia at one point, and now we're probably going to do some online events with Russia, and then later in the year we'll do some online events with Ukraine after they get rid of the bombs and the Stinger missiles or whatever they're called.
Okay, Sal, thank you very much for enlightening our people here and for your time.
Well, thank you for having me, and best of luck to everything with your channel. It sounds like a lot of good people are coming in here.
Yes. Hvala vama, poštovani gledalci. Ovo je bila emisija Intervju produkcije Balkan.